Okay, I think we're ready. Yain Lemurius. Now I'm using this Gemara tonight because it's pretty good. I am very impressed with this. This is again the Stipler's son, who has a nice running interpretation of the Gemara, and frankly, he makes Yerushalmi easy, to be honest with you, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing considering how hard Yerushalmi can be. So I'm going to read out of this, and there are a few changes in Girsa, which are essentially essential. So you will see them as we go along. Yain lemurius v'yain la lontis. Everybody see it now? You take wine for murias, or now murias is you're putting the wine into fish brine. This is in the old days. This is a delicacy, like kind of like herring and wine sauce. And they used to put the wine into the fish brine in order to make it taste better. Behind La Lontis, they used to put wine also into some sort of oil, and this is some sort of medicinal dish. So this wine, the question is whether you have to take mysis off it if you don't know if mysis was taken off previously, i.e. if it's in a state of demai, where it's questionable whether the mysis had been taken off or not already or not. Kidneys, also a third case, kidneys are legumes, also schinin, to make some sort of dish which includes the legumes and other substances as well. Chayom bin Mai. There's certainly, if you are unsure if the mices were taken off or not, you must take off the mai. Vein tzarich goes without saying b'vadai that if you know they weren't miser, of course you have to take miser off. Hey, not smum. However, if you bought ready-made murios, in other words, you bought the ready-made, vita, herring bits, and fish soy and wine sauce, right? If you like that kind of stuff, or you bought the alontis ready-made, or you bought the tchinin ready-made, them p'turim min admai. They're potter min admai. Now, I'm going to explain in a little bit of greater detail, but let's explain the principle before. Why is that? Because once it's in the alontis, or in the murias, it's already bato. It's not bato completely. Obviously, it does give a taste, but it's considered to be no longer so significant, and therefore, it doesn't require Meiser at that. If it's demai, if it's questionable whether it was Meiser, so Chachamim were additionally lenient and said you don't have to worry about it, just forget about it. Is that clear? As far as clear, the idea is clear. So Mana Kayamin says, who are you going like? Ink Rebbe. If we're going like Rebbe, now Rebbe is not mentioned here. I'll tell you what he says in a second. If we're going like Rebbe, I feel with my you chayav, so there should be chayav even in the mai. In Rebbe Rabbi Shimon, if it's going like Rebbe Rabbi Shimon, I feel b'vada you turn there should be exempt even from vadai. Now it's a very interesting. Again, the Yerushalmi doesn't bring down what Rebbe and Rabbi Lezer, Rebbe. Who's the other one? And Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Shimon's machlokus is. However, it's brought down here in the Mefarshim that there's a question about when you put wine into murias, and the wine was truma wine. Okay, now Rebbe says you're allowed to do that. Right? We're allowed to put truma wine into murias. Why? Because it gives it a taste. So it gives it a good taste, so therefore it's not considered to be a loss of the wine. And let me explain that a little bit more. Truma, obviously you're not allowed to cause a loss to truma. It's quasi-holy. It has to be safeguarded and preserved. It has to be eaten by a Kohen. So therefore, if something is truma, you can't really put it into muria. You can't put it somewhere. You couldn't put it into garbage. You couldn't pour it into something reprehensible. However, Rebbe holds murias is not reprehensible. So since it's not reprehensible, you're allowed to pour truma into it. Right? Is it the wine of truma, which is added onto it? Now it's not reprehensible, but it adds taste to it. It's not considered to be a loss of the truma. Okay, that's Rebbe's svara.
That whole mixture goes to the Kohen?
Yeah, the whole mixture goes to the Kohen. Rabbi Shimon says no. You're not allowed to pour it into murias because that's considered to be a loss for the wine. It's going down a notch. Wine in brine is no longer the same fine wine that he would have served independently. So therefore that's forbidden. Now, concerning what you said a minute ago, the Rebbe, of course, holds that therefore, as a result, the wine of Truma in the brine is Truma. You must eaten by a Kohen. But according to Rabbi Shimon, that would be the halacha. If you did it, you're not allowed to do it, but if you did it, the flip side of it is that even a Zar, even a non-Kohen could eat it because it's lost its full status as truma. It doesn't no longer has the same status.
But a Nazir couldn't eat it even according to Revelation.
No, that's an interesting point. But a Nazir probably would not be able to eat it because it still has a shame of wine, but lost its significance as truma. Very probably. I can't tell you for sure, but that's a good assumption. So it says the Gemara again. Who are you going to like? Ink Rebbe, I feel with Mayuchem. If it's like Rebbe, so it still retains its status as wine when it's in the brine. So therefore, you should have to take off Maisis even if it's only Demai. Even if it's definitely not Meiser yet, you shouldn't have to take off any Meiser on it. Why? Because once it's in the brine, it doesn't have a name of wine anymore. It's brine, and of course, fish brine is not chayv in anything, right? So says the Gemara, Ella Karebi. So it says the Gemara, you know what? It's really going like Rebbe. Hi, according to Rebbe, it's still considered to be wine. You should have to take off Meiser if you're not sure that was tithe previously. So it says Gemara, and Amrin, Bekalin, we say that this is one of the kulos which they are made by Demai. In other words, despite the fact that hypothetically speaking it's still wine, we know by Demai they were lenient because there's a principle that most Amaratzim, most ignorant people did take off Trumas and Meisers. A minority did not tithe their produce. So since we're here, the whole concept of Demai is a chumrah, where the majority is not to be questioned, so then they were makel in certain cases. One of the cases they were lenient in was this case we put wine into the murias. Okay?
Is there a proportion here like Batel B'Shishim?
No, it's not the same thing as Batel B'Shishim here. It's even less. So long as the wine is not, independent. Right, it's a kula of the Demai. It's a special kula. Okay, you can't recognize as being distinct. Yain bekilur, yain lekilur. You put wine into kilur. Kilur is a eye ointment, right? Kilur in lainaim is something which clarifies the eye, makes the eye better.
Collyrium probably comes from that word.
It's probably
Collyrium is an eye drop.
Yeah, obviously it's a Greek word which shares a common base. That's right. So that's kilurim, right? Collyrium?
Collyrium, yeah.
Collyrium, okay. Yain lekilur kemach lasosa melugma, or if you take that's the wine, or if you take flour to make from it a bandage. The melugma is a kind of bandage. So in these cases, chayavim bivada. If you know for sure that the wine was not meiser or the grain was not meiser, then you have to take a meiser. However, and here there's a gears to change. Upeturim mi bidmai. They're exempt from bidmai. Does anybody here else have the word upeturim? Okay, so it's supposed to be the Tosefta change the gear that has different gears. So they're exempt from bidmai. In other words, Chazal said if you're going to use it, if it's vadai, if it's definitely not tight, then tight it. But if it's demai, so there's another kula by demai. Says the Gemara, hey Natzman, what if you actually bought from a pharmacist kilurium, right? Made of this. Now it has wine in it, but you're buying the ready-made product, or you're buying ready-made melugma. Ready-made bandages, right? In that case, so it says more if you buy them themselves, hey natzar peturim minavadai. That even if they're definitely not tithed, since at the time you bought them, they're ready, not edible substances, but rather they are for a topical use only. So therefore, since that is the case, they are exempt even from vadai, right? Says the Gemara, hocho atamar. Here, so we have a kasha. In one case, you said that it's exempt from vadai. In other words, in the case of the kilur, when you buy it ready as a kilur, you're exempt even from vadai. Yet before buys a brine, we said that the brine, if it's vada, you do have to take off Trumas and Maisos. We said the only time you don't have to take off Trumas and Maisos is if it's Demai. But if you're not sure, but if you're definitely sure that it wasn't tight previously, so you do have to take off the tights now. So what's the difference? What's the
difference? Is one is edible and the other.
That's exactly more answers. Says more Khan here al gab gufo hu batel. Here, when it's agav guf, it's a funny language, but what it means is agav gufo batel means that you're ingested into your body. Not agav usually means topical, on top of it. Here means it's ingested. Since you're eating the murios, they're more machmir. Agav gufo batel, I guess, means when it gets inside your body, that's when it dissipates or when it's absorbed. But kakeim shunos no hu batel. And here, however, on the other hand, by the kilur, so once it's made into kilur, it no longer has the shame of being an edible substance anymore. So essentially, your answer in a funny way of putting it. Ask the Gemara about tiny kilur shavad zara sabana. Wait a minute, how can you say that once it's kilur, it's exempt even from vadai trumusum ma'isris? We see that kilur made from wine of avodah zara from yain nesa is forbidden in all. So we see that we're very machmir by. But even though it's kilurin, even though it's for topical use only, says more shiny here. Avodah zarah is different. The Chsiv says lo yidbak biyadcha meuma min acherem. Says nothing from the repulsive nature of avodah zarah should stick to your hand. In other words, they were much more stringent about what we accept, and there we don't even accept kilurin ready-made from wine of avodah zarah. Says the Gemara, Mabinon l'shmorim shalakum. What's the difference between this and shmorim shalakum? Shmorim are dregs, right? Dregs of wine, which I'm not sure we use. Maybe you also use for medicinal purposes. But in any event, says the Gemara, what's the difference between this and shmorim shalakum? Ilu shmorim shalakum. Shema Einan Asurim Bano, aren't Shmorim of Avodah Zarah or Aser Bano as well? Says, well, no. The truth is, and here again is a gears of change, time we learn Shmorim Shiavshu Ein B'hem Mishum Anois Avodah Zarah. Shmorim, they're dregs, there is no problem of Anois Avodah Zarah. Where's the problem of Anois Avodah Zarah? Only by a case of the wine itself. In other words, by the kilurim, they mixed in wine. So wine is much more chumrah. That's what actually is libated to the avodah zarah. That's where machmir, special chumrah. But the shmorim, you should know, says the Gemara, by the dregs of the wine, which is not suitable for libation purposes. In that case, dregs of avodah zarah wine are permitted with anoah, special kula. Okay.
I wouldn't have expected that answer by now.
No.
Excuse me.
I wouldn't have expected that answer.
That it's mutter by anoah.
Yeah. Because avodah zarah is treated so uniquely throughout the Gemara that anything related to avodah zarah seems to be asur. I mean, even the machshava of avodah zarah is asur. Ad kedei kach. So it's an unusual. Not permitted.
Yeah, asur. But asur. Well, in Yiddish it's asur.
Asur.
Yeah. We use the Yiddishism when we speak. Right. We're not grammatically correct always.
For sure.
Yeah. So in any event, what can I tell you? It's a brisa. The Gemara is surprised by this as well, right? But the Gemara is really, the Gemara ends the sugi here, but the Gemara it's almost as if the Gemara is ending with a question. There is no reconciliation here, right? The Gemara is saying the whole thing should be awesome, but we do find a brisa which says the shmorim shiavshu ein behem mishum anois avodah zarah.
Sure, by Nazir, the dregs are not allowed.
The dregs are also, but because there it's different, because there the Torah asert even the pits and seeds, the pits and the skins. So there's a special xeris kosev over there that would not apply to avodah zarah. Okay, it has to be something which is suitable for libating by avodah zarah. Okay, for araya, grapes of avodah zarah are permitted, right? I don't mean grapes which a goy came into contact with are permitted, right? It's only wine, right? Whereas by Nazir, he's not even allowed to eat grapes. Okay? Miksiv lahalan. Does it say geziv or kaziv in your Gemara? Geziv. Well, it's kaziv, right? Miksiv lahalan pater min admai. It says north of Gziv is exempt from Demai because north of Gziv is not Eretz Yisrael anymore. Gziv atma mahi. What's the status of Gziv itself? Tani, we learn Gziv atma p'tur min admai. Gziv itself is exempt from Demai as well. Do you have the place? Says the Gemara, halokech min hachameres. So it's like chutzlart. Halokech min hachameres b'tzor. Now here we have a bunch of strange halachas. Halokech min hachameres. Just the Gemara itself is going to leave them shver, but that's life. Halokech min hachameres. If you buy from donkey drivers, from caravans in Tzor, in Tyre, uminam guras, or from stockpiles in Sidon. Now Tyre is more northerly You know that for a fact?
Oh, which is more northerly?
Tyre is more northerly than Sidon. Tyre is more northerly. Take it on faith. Okay, I didn't look at a map before saying this over, but Tyre is more northerly than Sidon. So in Tzor, only if you have donkey drivers who came there, so I'd say they might be bringing fruit from Eretz Yisrael, right? Because they didn't stockpile it, because it came from too far away. So maybe it came from time to time, but generally stockpiles do not have fruit from Eretz Yisrael, unless that day there came a donkey driver. In Sidon, even the stockpiles were stockpiled from Eretz Yisrael, because it's close enough that they came on a very regular basis. Okay, so if you buy mina chameres b'tzor, it's chayev. Mina maguras b'tzidon chayev. Right now, ask a funny thing, because it sounds like the other way around. Mina maguras b'tzor umina chamorim b'tzidon potter. It means that if you buy from a stockpile in Tzor, that it's exempt. Well, okay, that might be, because that means that, if it's stockpile, they probably didn't stockpile stuff that came so far away from Eretz Yisrael. But it sounds like, Chamorim B'tzidam Potter, the duff you buy from donkey drivers in Sidon, then you're exempted. That doesn't make any sense. After all, the donkey drivers have to go through Tyre to get through Sidon to get to Tzor, right? So if that's the case, you should certainly be chayav if you buy from a donkey driver. The Gemara doesn't answer. Just leaves it up in the air. Says the Gemara, Avafil, and here's a Gersa change again from the Gra. Avafil mechamari chidi b'tzor. That which when you buy from a donkey driver in Tzor, it's not just if there's a caravan, but you buy from a single donkey driver, that already makes you chayiv in Trumas in Demai. Okay, chamer shnichlas l'tzor derech ziv. Here the Gemara points out another paradox. You have a chameris, a donkey caravan, which came to Tzor, right? Went to Tzor, derech ziv, via ziv, asi chamei. Listen to this. Ilu amdala b'gziv petura. If it stood in staying gziv, it would have been exempt. Because the halachas kaziv is exempt from Trumas Umaisus, right? From Demai. So therefore, I had that donkey. There's no special halacha ever brought down that a caravan which stops in Kaziv, you have to give Trumas Umaisus from, right? For Demai from. Yet if that same caravan goes up to Tzor, then in Tzor it becomes chayiv in Trumas Umaisus.
Even though it's further north.
Even though it's further north. So there's another one of these paradoxes, right? Then in Kaziv itself, you wouldn't have to be choshesh, right? But in Tzor you have to be choshesh. So the truth is, although these seem like paradoxes, they're not preposterous. A lot of this has to do with the prevalent commerce and trade conditions. So it is possible that there were no donkey caravans in Ksiv, generally speaking, which brought fruit from the other parts of Eretz Yisrael. But there could have been a very thriving export business going all the way up to Tzor. So therefore, although these seem like paradoxes, they're not necessarily paradoxes. You understand what I'm saying?
Do we know where Ksiv is now?
Yeah, so the place in Israel, Achziv. It does exist. It's there. South of Rosh Hanikra. It's not south of the current border. Okay? Says more further. Rabbi Yochanan says, B'shah shegazru admai, when they made a gzera on Demai, lo goza advarim eila. They didn't make gzera on these things. Now these things going back to Mishnah. The Mishnah said if you take challah get your Kohen, you get challah from an Amoritz. Even though the challah should be chayiv in Demai, because the Amoritz didn't take off truth to Meiser from his grain. Nonetheless, Chazal, according to Rabbi Yochanan, didn't make a gzeira on challah, which you got from an Amoritz, or certain other things that you got from Amoritz as well. Rabbi Yeshua, it's different. Rabbi Yeshua says, you know what? In our mission, it's not because the Chachamim didn't make a gzeira, but rather, Emas Kochim Olav. The Amoritz is afraid of Kochim, and therefore he doesn't give it the Kohen. He's afraid to give the Kohen something which is not proper. There's a special Yerushalmi which an Amoritz has, not to do something improper when it has to do with giving the Kohen. So a heebie-jeebie type of thing. He's afraid to get involved with magical, mystical stuff. Okay, so if he gives the Kohen something, he gives something Kohen which is okay. Says more about Chalos Amoret. Okay, that's why about Chalav and Amoritz. Al daiti Rabbi Yoshua, according to Rabbi Yoshua, specifically chalas amoritz masnisa. Specifically, the amoritz himself took of chala. Avochala shalokach isa chaver shalokach isa me'amoritz. Let's say you are a Talmud Chacham, a reliable person, and you bought dough from the amoritz, dough from which chala has not even been taken off. Vivish chalasa, and you took off chala on it. Lo al daite Rabbi Yochanan, he hador. Then wouldn't you say Rabbi Yochanan? It's the same thing. There's Rabbi Yochanan. There's no gzeira on chala. You don't have to take off tamai from chala. So it doesn't matter who took off the chala, the amoritz or the Talmud Chacham. There's no din of Kohen doesn't have to take off tamai and chala. But according to Rabbi Yoshua, no. It's specifically when the amoritz took off chala. Because I say the amoritz is afraid not to give you properly tight challah. But where it's a case where you get from an amoritz dough, and you a chaver take meisers off, take challah off that dough is still chayiv in Demai. No? According to Rabbi Yoshua, it's a specific din in the challah of an amoritz. And amoritz is not going to mess up a Kohen. Okay, according to Rabbi Yochanan, it's an assumption. According to Rabbi Yochanan, it's much more simplistic thing. Chazal weren't geyser on challah altogether for whatever reason. It's not germane. They weren't geyser. They have to be suspect mai in challah, right? So the nafkamina, what's the difference between the two opinions? Nafkamina is a case where not the amoritz himself took up challah, but rather an amoritz had a dough, and he gave the dough to a chaver, and the chaver took off challah. So like Rabbi Yochanan, there was no gzeira on challah. You never have to take the mai off of challah, regardless of who actually made the challah, whether it be the amoritz or Talmud Chacham. Like Rabbi Yochanan, that's like Rabbi Yochanan, excuse me. Like Rabbi Yoshua, so I say no, it's specifically a din of the challah of an amoritz. That if he is giving you challah, we assume he took off trumas and meises properly. But if then a chaver took dough from the amoritz, and obviously at that point the amoritz did not suspect that it would ever become challah. So in that case, when the chaver takes off challah later on, he's going to have to take the mai off that challah. Okay. Similarly, a similar case, v'ameduma. If truma gets mixed in with regular grain, and there's not enough to be a regular grain to cancel the truma, so you have to give it to a kohen.
What does it mean to cancel?
What you need 100 chulin. If 100 parts of regular food, the 100 parts of regular food and one part of truma falls into it, so the truma is considered to be nullified by the regular grain. But let's say there's less. So in that case, you have to give it to a kohen to eat. The kohen gets the whole mixture. Okay, a regular guy can't eat it.
100 to 1.
100 to 1 is the ratio, right? Proportion. So in this case, you have, let's say, one part of truma in 50 parts of regular stuff. So according to Rabbi, you have to give it to kohen. According to Rabbi Yoshua, repairs amoritz masnisa. That's all about where the amoritz gave that meduma to a kohen, so then the kohen doesn't have to take off trumas samaisus of demai. But if a chaver bought fruit from an amoritz, and on his watch, in his jurisdiction, need mut, then some truma got mixed in. Lo al daiti Rabbi Yochanan, he ado. According to Rabbi Yochanan, it's the same thing because it's again, Rabban weren't guys that you have to take Trumas L'Maitzos off of Meduma, regardless of where it became Meduma. In that time, Amoritz, at times of the Chaver. But according to Rabbi Yeshua, it's specifically because Amoritz is afraid to make a misstep with stuff which became Kadosh in his jurisdiction. And therefore, it's only Meduma which occurred by an Amoritz. Meduma which occurred after it left the Amoritz's possession, and that whoever gets that Meduma, the Kohen, has to take off Trumas and Maisus, has to take off Maisus because of Demai. Okay? Says the Gemara, again, I stopped in the line. No, I didn't. My nafi bin binon. What is the nafi binon mean? What's the nafi? What's the difference between the opinions? But here we want to know the difference between the opinions in which Rabbi Yochanan will be machmir and Rabbi Yeshua will be mekel. Says the Gemara, I'll tell you a difference. I'll tell you a case. Says the Gemara, Sa'ah oleh mitoch me'ah. The halacha is where you do have enough to cancel. You have a proportion which can cancel. In other words, it's 100 to 1, right? And you can cancel the truma. There's a din d'Rabbanan that nonetheless you have to give a measure to the Kohanim. Why? So the Kohanim don't lose. So it's otherwise they would have lost this measure. So you give a measure to the Kohanim. So that's only a din d'Rabbanan. It's a rabbinic enactment. It's not the Raisa. So in that case, says the Gemara, Al daiti Rabbi Yochanan chayeves, called Rabbi Yochanan it's chayev, because it's not bona fide truma, right? It's not doesn't fall under the parameters of something which Chazal said it's exempt from trumas u'maisrus. It's exempt from the mai, because it's not bona fide truma. It's only a din d'Rabbanan to cover the loss of the kohen. But however, according to Rabbi Yeshua, Al Daita Rabbi Yeshua Petura, it's exempt because according to Rabbi Yeshua, anytime he gives stuff to the Kohen, he's afraid of heebie-jeebies. So therefore, he's not going to give him anything which is Demai. He's going to make sure that it's Mesukar. So this is a case in which Rabbi Yeshua will actually be Mekel and Rabbi Yochanan will be Machmir. Okay? It says in Waratani we learned V'kulan shekaru shem l'trumas ma'aser. It says if the Amoritz gave a name to the Trumas Meiser, in the case of sorry, not the Amoritz. I apologize. The person who got the stuff, the Kohen, got challah from an Amoritz. You didn't know the halacha. You thought you had to take off the mai. You didn't know they were exempt. So you took off the mai. What does the mai consist of? You took off Trumas Meiser. You took off Meiser Sheni. So says this Brisa, even though you were exempt from doing it, the Kulan Shekar Shem Trumas Meiser Meiser Sheni Shalem, you took off nonetheless you took off Trumas Meiser Meiser Sheni, Masha also Asui. It's valid. That which you took off is valid Trumas Meiser, is valid Meiser Sheni. Says the Gemara, David, you gave that a Mishnais. Yehuda, which Mishnais did you want? Which Mishnais did you want? Which Mishnais did you want? Alright. Never mind, thanks. Okay, says the Gemara, I'll die to again. I'll die in this case. So I'll die to Rabbi Yochanan Nicha. According to Rabbi Yochanan, I understand that because Rabbi Yochanan just said Chazal weren't geyser. They didn't make you do it. But if you did it, you did it. I'll die to Rabbi Yochanan. According to Rabbi Yochanan, how can this be a valid act at all? Misukanin. According to Rabbi Yochanan, we hold the Amoritz before he gave the stuff to Kohen. He actually took off the Trumas and Meiser Sheni. So to take him off again, it's an empty gesture. It's a meaningless act. It can't be valid in any way, shape, or form. Vata Marta, you're going to say that it has any validity to it? Says the Gemara.
To say if something's already Meiser is taken from something and you do it again?
It's meaningless. It's null and void gesture.
Did you say it's an endowment to the Kohen?
No. There's no such thing.
Make it endowment to Hector?
That's a gift. You have to give his gift, but you're assuming it's Trumas Meiser or Meiser Sheni without the halachos. It's not. You have to call a spade a spade. It's not Trumas Meiser. It's not Meiser Sheni. So says the Gemara. So Mibnei Sheinu Misak. Says the Gemara. Very interesting answer. Says the Gemara. You know what? Even called Rabbi Yoshi, it's good. Mibnei Echot Sheinu Misakin. Because there's always one Amoritz who doesn't fix it up. Shein Emas Kochim Elov, who's not afraid of Kochim whatsoever. This is a very interesting concept because you think Demai was made because of a miut of Amoratzim who aren't Meiser. Says Rabbi Yeshua, but when it comes to hekdesh, not hekdesh, truma, right? Giving truma or challah to Kohen, more amaratzim meiser. Let's give numbers. Normally 70% of amaratzim meiser. For the other 30%, we made exera. And it comes to truma, so comes to something which is going to be truma or challah. So 90% of amaratzim take off meisers. So we weren't going to make the mai in that case. But still, if the Kohen did take off the mai, since there are 10% who don't even take off Trumas and Maisers in that case, so that's why, if you did it, it takes effect. Okay? So says Gemara further, Tani we learned, the Kulam Shakara Hashem, we learned the Bryce which says this explicitly. The Kulan Shakar Hashem LaTrumas Ma'aser LaMa'aser Shein Shlem. Anytime they Kohen set aside Trumas Ma'aser Ma'aser Shein from the stuff he got from Namoritz, Masha also that which he did, it takes effect. Because somewhere there's somebody who's not doing the right thing. Okay, new issue. Raibun Barachia Boy Kumi Rabbi Zira. Raibun Barachia asked in front of Rabbi Zira. Ad Kedum Mikesef Show Meiser. Now here there's a gears to change again, the Gra. Ad Kedum Mikesef Show Meiser Shel Vadai. Okay, it says by you Demai, right? So he says it's supposed to be Vadai. So this is talking about something which you bought with money, something which is bought with money of Meiser Sheni in Yerushalmi. You don't have to take off Demai. If you bought stuff with money of Meiser Sheni Yerushalmi, you don't have to take off Demai. In other words, you bought from an Amoretz, so you don't have to take off Meiser. You bought something from Amoretz Yerushalmi, you don't have to take off Meiser of Demai. So that's only if you bought. Maybe that's only if you bought with your Meiser money, which is Vadei Meiser money. Afilu b'dmai. What about if you bought with Demai? It sounds. Is that the same thing? We give you that also cool as well. But then you bought the stuff Yerushalayim from Amoritz with Meiser Sheni money of Demai. Also the same halach applies. Only you bought the stuff from the Amoritz in Yerushalayim with Meiser Sheni money of Vadai. The Gemara never resolves the issue. The Gemara goes on to the next question. Tani, okay, new issue. The Kulan Shakar Hashem L'Trumas Meiser or L'Meiser Sheni Shalem. In all the cases when you determined a name for the Trumas Meiser or the Meiser Sheni, Masha also Asui. That's what we just saw before. In other words, even though you're an exempt, if you did it anyway, it takes effect, right? According to Rabbi Yeshua, because there's some stinker somewhere who doesn't do it properly, right? So says the Gemara, Masha Asui, not really a louse. Not just an Amoritz. There's somebody somewhere who's really a lousy, really a low life, a rotten person, and that person doesn't take off even from the stuff which is going to a Kohen. So because of him, if you took off the Trumas Meiser or Meiser Sheni from the Challah, from the Meduma, from the Lakuach Bekes and Meiser Sheni, it does take effect. Okay, now, since that's the case, the Gemara qualifies. Rabbi Lezer Mar Chutz Mishari Menachos. This is true about any substance except for the leftover mincha. If Amoritz brings a mincha to the Beis HaMikdash, you're afraid it might be Demai, right? Right, that's what the Rabbi Lezer is saying. Rabbi Lezer is saying, there, the heebie-jeebie theory is there's so many heebie-jeebies that for sure he took off his ma'ases from the Demai. So in that case, we're definitely not going to be able to suspect that he left anything. That he left anything. Rabbi Yirmiyah says, Hashar b'machlokas. Even the rest of the stuff is a machlokas. In other words, don't think that everybody agrees that masha also asli, that if you did it, it's okay. No, many people disagree. They hold even by the EBGB factor is high enough by all the other substances, by truma, by challah, by all that lamaisa, the Amoritz for sure takes off maestris, and there's no Demai factor by them at all. Rabbi Yossi boy, I do machlokas. Rabbi Yossi asked what machlokas are referring to. Hi, do which is this machlokas. Manon kayam, what are we talking about? Ik Rabbi Meir, ever going like Rabbi Meir. So I think this is really the answer already. This is the machlokas. Ik Rabbi Meir, he might see shiur menachos. Loss of lo klub. Like Rabbi Meir, Meir holds Meiser Sheni's moment gavor. Meir holds a Meiser Sheni. That which is required with Meiser Sheni is like hektish. That's his halacha. He holds, if you buy stuff with Meiser Sheni money, you can't marry a woman with it because it's not your substance. So according to him, there'd be a machlokas even by lukoch because of Meiser Sheni. Since it's like hektish, so therefore, if you got the stuff from an amoret, so then in that case it would not. If you took off nonetheless trumas and meisers, it wouldn't be a valid transaction at all. He meiser shiur menachos lo sav lo klum. Rabbi Yehuda, like Rabbi Yehuda, who says that Meiser Sheni money is your money, and you can marry a woman with it. So therefore, according to him, it's not the same thing. Rather, it's not the same thing as shiur menachos. And there, if you happen to take off trumas and meisers from lekoch with Meiser Sheni, so masha also it is a valid transaction. Amar Rabbi Mona said, I went up to Kesarin, to Caesarea. Shemas Rabbi Chizkiah Yosef and Masnei, and I heard Rabbi Chizkiah sitting and learning over. Hamakadish bechoko b'kochi kochi mekoin. He marries a woman with the portion which he got from a chatos, which is kochi kochi, portion he got to eat. Oh, b'kochim kalim, or anybody, even a Yisro who gets a portion in Shlomim, which are kochim kalim, ain't a mekudeshes. It's not about kiddushin. Rabbi Elazar says that it's not about kiddushin because obviously the korban is considered to belong to God, not to this owner. This is a universal principle. Rabbi Yochanan says it's a matter of dispute. Vamri Slain, I said, Mansha, my Rabbi Hamil saw from who did my master hear this machlokas? From Arlene, he said to me, Min Rabbi Yirmiyah, I heard it from Rabbi Yirmiyah. And I said, Vamaris, and I myself said, Yos, good answer. Rabbi Yirmiyah, there was Rabbi Yirmiyah. To Shama Hada, because Rabbi Yirmiyah himself heard at the few lines before that Rabbi Eliezer said that Hada Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer said Divrei Hakol that shiur menachos. If you take trumas and meiser of that, we don't say masha so that in and of itself the Hada Rabbi Eliezer Divrei Hakoli. Dusham Hada Rabbi Eliezer Divrei Hakoli Doamar Machlokas, and that he himself said that that's a machlokas. It's not a simple thing. Okay, that others disagree even about the other things. Now, Rabbi Yossi Delo Shmi Ale Tzrichale. Rabbi Yossi, who did not hear who the arguing parties were in this case, Tzrichale. He asked the question. Tzricha here means he asked the question. Who the Amar Haida Machlokas? He's the one who said, who's this Machlokas going like? Ikra Meir, he Meiser Sheni, he Shiur menachos lo sa klum. It was responded to him. Rabbi Yossi, I know it's a bit convoluted, but what happened was, basically what's happening is they were just repeating over what we said before. In other words, when he went down to when Rabbi Mona went to Caesarea and he heard Rabbi Chizkiah saying that there's this machlokas by Mekadosh Bechoko Bekochi Kochim or Bekochim Kalim where it's about Kiddushin, he just hooked it up back to what he heard from Rabbi Yirmiyah that there's a machlokas by Meiser Sheni whether it's Mammon Gavoah, Mammon Hedya, and therefore whether Masha also Asli in terms of Demai. It's really that just a hyper connection between our sugya and that sugya of the case of Mekadosh Bechoko. Okay, so and he's repeating Rabbi Yossi, who didn't hear who the litigants were in this machlokas. He asked the kasha and he was inspired Ikra Meir, and he was told, or by Rabbi Yirmiyah, or he himself understood, I'm not sure which one, that Ikra Meir he Ma'aser Sheni Yishar Menachos, like Rabbi Meir Ma'aser Sheni is Shar Menachos, and therefore lo klum. In Rabbi Yehuda, if it's like Rabbi Yehuda, Masha Asli, then sure, then Ma'aser Sheni is not like Mammon Gava, but it belongs to you, and therefore it's loss of local. The bottom line is therefore Masha Asli, and therefore if you did it, it's considered to be if you did take off Trumas of Maisers of Demai from the stuff which is bought from Ma'aser Sheni, it is a valid transaction. So again, this is very confusing. Who exactly is saying what about what? But to distill to its essence, we're saying that there's a similar machlokas by Mekadosh Bechelko Bekochi Kochi, whether we regard as being your money or being the money of God, to the machlokas which we have over here by us, by Melakuach Ma'aser Sheni, is it your money or the money of God? And just like the machlokas over there is whether you can be Mekadosh with it, here the machlokas is when he took the Kohen, or not the Kohen, the guy who bought the Ma'aser stuff with the Ma'aser Sheni money, when he takes my Ma'asers off that because of the my issues, is that considered to be a valid Ma'aser, not a valid Ma'aser? Okay, so that's the connection. Tani, we learned Rabbi Yehuda said back in our Mishnah, Lo patru Beisil al shemen shel plaiton. Beisil said you don't have to take the mai off of oil; it's only plaiton, fragrant oils. Bilvad. However, edible oils you always have to take mai off. Not only that, but Beisil is mechayev with rose oil to take off tamai. Rose oil you don't cook, you don't eat, but since it's used as perfume, as to anoint your body, so he holds that sicha is k'shesiyah, that anointing yourself is like drinking. You know, on Yom Kippur we're a machmir, not to anoint ourselves with oils, because anointing is like drinking. So he would hold, according to Beis Hillel, then that would be chayav in Trumas U'Maises of Tamai. Okay, new Mishnah. Hatamai. How many blot have we done in that Gemara so far? What? Where do we start on?
We start on Dalet and Bottom
Yeah.
of Dalet.
So we did 1.5 so far, right?
Right, so if we go to drop,
Okay, let's finish the parent, okay? Yeah. Okay. Masnisin. Hadmai Marvin Bo Mishtatfin Bo. Now, this is in Yonah the Yoma and Peterson Park, especially for the way you can make an Eruv with Demai. Now, what Eruv are you referring to? If two Jews... No, that too, actually. Truth is, you're right. Yes, it's Tchumen and Chatzeros. I don't know why I said no. It's both. Erev Tchumen is if you at the end of 2,000 Amos on Shabbos, you need to leave food, right, in order to walk another 2,000 Amos. Chatzeros is if two or more Jews want to make a common domain in order to carry from one house to another. That's also called an Eruv. One is Eruv Tchumen, one is Eruv Chatzeros. So normally you have to make Eruv with substance you're allowed to eat, right? If you wanted to make an Eruv with certain kinds of meat under the Ashkach of certain Rabbanim in Chicago, perhaps in other places, you couldn't use it, right?
Where would you leave it?
2,000 amos away from the city.
Where?
Anywhere. Out in the fields. Yeah.
Fox would give in.
As long as it's there Friday night by sunset, you're okay. That's what you have to make sure. Doesn't matter as long as it's by then there. Right? It's a rabbinic decree. It's symbolic. It's not practical. It's symbolic. Okay. So Admaim Arvin Bo, Mishtatfin Bo, and Shitufim Mavos is the same thing as Eruv Chatzeros, except one was done in courtyards, one was done in alleys. And Mavorchin Olav. You make a bracha on it if you eat it. If you eat tevel, you don't make a bracha. You're eating it, so you're not allowed to make a bracha. But here you make a bracha if you eat it. We shouldn't eat it without taking off the maisus. But if you didn't make a bracha, you can bench with the mezumin. And if you're in the kitchen naked and you got to take off the mai, you're allowed to do so. Now, Vada, you're not allowed to take off naked. Why is that? You have to make a bracha when you separate it. But at the Demai, you don't make a bracha when you separate it, so therefore you can take it off when you're naked. Right? Ubein Hashmoshos. Erev Shabbos after dark, after sunset, before absolute nightfall, between Shki and Seisa Kochavim. What?
You cannot make an Eruv. What's the Mishnah from Ben Madlikin?
Yeah. It says there, Misaki Nesadmai. Masri Nesadmai. So this is this halacha. You have to Meiser Demai, Erev Shabbos Ben Hashmoshos. Because it's not true fixing. Right? Vada, if you made Meiser Demai, that would be a sort of fixing out to a Ben Hashmoshos. But this we're more lenient. Now, this halacha is going to cause us some headaches in the Gemara. Normally you're not allowed to take off Meiser Sheni for Meiser Rishon. You have to take off first Meiser Rishon, which is actually 10% of your grain, and then Meiser Sheni, which is actually how much of your grain? 10% of the remainder, which is 9%. So what happens if you took off Meiser Rishon, Meiser Sheni for Meiser Rishon? It's very bad. You mess things up royally in that case. If it's Vadai, you're in bad shape. However, by the Demai, we're making. You can take off Meiser Sheni before Meiser Rishon. Okay? It's okay. In that case, you don't care. Says the Gemara, Shemen Shagar, the Mishnah, Shemen Shagardi Sach Betzbosav, oil which a gardi, which a wool comber puts on his fingers. Yes. Meiser Rishon goes to Levites. Truma goes to Kohanim. But even Amaratzim, even ignorant people, took off to the Truma. The only thing they were suspect not to take is Meiser. Okay, which is a notch down. So, Shemen Shagari Sach Betzbos, of oil which a comber puts on, a wool comber puts on his fingers, Chai B'Dmai is Chai B'Dmai. V'shasorek Nosi B'Tzemer, however, which the carder, the person who combs the wool, puts on the wool itself, Potem in Admai, that's exempt from Dmai. And the Gemara is going to ask why. Meantime, Marfish no Soru, you can separate it naked. Shein Tom Bracha, don't make a bracha on it. Ubein Hashmoshos, twilight. Twilight is when you're not sure if it's dark or not. Tani we learned, Rav Chalafter ben Shol said, Mechalni Demai b'merchotz. You can also redeem Demai in a bathhouse. Shein Tom Bracha, you don't make a bracha when you redeem Demai. So therefore, you can do it even when you're in a bathhouse, i.e. when you are naked, right? Vadai Tom Bracha. But when you redeem definite Meiser Sheni, you do make a bracha, and you can't do that in a bathhouse. My mevorech, Ketzah mevorech. Oh, sorry, I skipped a few words. Rabbi Mona boy kukume Rabbi Yudon Ketzah mevorech. What bracha do you make? Ima you peros. If you are redeeming fruit on coins, you say Al Pidio Meiser Sheni. Bruchat Hashem Mokem Elcha. Sheikh Hashem Mitzvah No Pidio Meiser Sheni. If you had money and you're buying them with the money crops in Yerushalmi to eat, you say Bruchat Hashem Elokeinu Melech Olam Al Chilu Meiser Sheni. Imiktim Sheni L'Rishon Ein Mekach Klum. Now go back to our Mishnah. The Mishnah said if you give my shame for Meiser Rishon, doesn't matter. B'sha'avar. It sounds like b'di'evet. B'sha'avar is the same thing as b'di'avad, if you did it. It sounds like l'chatchila you're not allowed to. Rabbi Ba, by the way, the next sugya is very difficult. I don't think it'll take us long, but I just want you to know, in all fairness, it is difficult. Rabbi Ba braid Rabbi Chia Barva, Rabbi Ba the son of Rabbi Chia Barva, and Rabbi Chia b'shem Rabbi Yochanan said, Mutar lakti masheni l'rishon b'dmai. It's not just b'di'evet. You're allowed to l'chatchila. You can give Meiser Sheni before Meiser Rishon by Demai. Rabbi Yaakov Baracha Baridi b'Shem Rabbi Yeshua Levi said, Lo Yaseh. No. Like the Mishnah seems to indicate, you shouldn't do it. If you did it, it's okay. Ma'u likva sheni. Now that was all easy. Now Katzar. Ma'u likva sheni b'mokom rishon. If you you took a Meiser Sheni of the Mai. Can you now before Rishon? Can you now redeem the Sheni and use the same fruit to become your Meiser Rishon? Kill two birds with one stone. Meiser Rishon is not redeemable. Meiser Sheni is, right? So can you redeem them? Take off Meiser Sheni, redeem it, and then take Meiser Rishon on the same fruit. Okay, so it's doing double duty. First was Meiser Sheni, then was redeemed, then was becomes Meiser Rishon. Okay, good Shaila, right? Says the Gemara again. Ma'u likba Sheni b'mokom rishon. Rabbi Yosef B'Shol Aisle Arise Peri. So Rabbi Yosef B'Shol had such a Maisa. Aisle Arise Peri is or it's a sharecropper brought him fruit. Amar lei, so he said to sharecropper, take Sheni. Go take a Meiser Sheni for him. He made a mistake. What should he have said to do first? Take some Meiser Rishon, but he said to take Meiser Sheni. Because of Amalei, then he went and said, whoops, take Kvar Rishon. Go and take the Meiser Rishon. Did he tell him, but be careful, don't take the Rishon from the place you took the Sheni? He didn't tell him that. From the fact he didn't warn the sharecropper not to do that, we have proof that the sheni can be redeemed and then he can use it to get the rishon. Okay, it is a weak proof. But you yourself said way back in Brachos. Do you remember what you said? Forgot already. Yerushalmi very often brings proofs not from drushes, but from stories. That's right, okay? That's the Spindel Yisoid. You have to remember that.
Well, it's not the Meiser Shaya, it's the way he did it. It's because of an over.
I understand. You're right. I understand. It is different even than a regular Meiser Rav. But that's what's happening here. Ula Ba'ishmael B'Shem Rabbi Yochanan said, Poter Adam Estivlo, a person can exempt his tevel, B'Sei Acha Shel Tevel. You have a lot of tevel, whatever it is, 10 buckets of tevel. So you can take care of those 10 buckets with one other bucket of tevel. How do you do that? So maybe se'acha shel tevel. You bring one bucket of tevel, v'osa sheni, you make a ma'aser sheni, upoito, so you redeem it, v'chozer v'osa shumas ma'aser l'mokom acher, and then you make it ma'aser. The Mefarshim say here is it's skipping a step. What you did is you have 10 buckets of tevel. Then you take a bucket, you make it ma'aser sheni, you redeem it. Then you make that same bucket with 10% and 10%, because the same grain which you took off ma'aser sheni, you're taking off as ma'aser rishon afterwards, right? And a tenth of that is going to the Kohen. Okay? Because of nachas ula tamon. Did I skip anything? No, right? Nachas ula tamon. Ula went down to Bavel. Ram Rabbi Shem Rabbi Yochanan, send Rabbi Yochanan. And they ganged up against it. Oh boy, were they upset with this halacha. Hey, said Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes asked the kasha. He asked Ula kasha. He asked him, for Masisa Pliga. Doesn't the Brisa argue? What does the Brisa say? Brisa says, a person had in front of him 2 buckets of tevel. Okay, 2 buckets. V'tani law, and it says over there, I hope I don't get this wrong. Okay, this is kind of complicated. V'tani law says, no, it says over there, you take from bucket number 2, 2 figs, which is your truma gedayla, that's your regular truma, and 2/10. 1/10 for ma'aser rishon, and 1/10 for ma'aser sheni. V'isur shalisser. And from those 2/10, you take 1/10 of a tenth for Trumas Meiser. Okay? V'yito shnei te'enim, v'yaso som sheni. So ask the Gemara, according to you, Ula, Rav Sheshes asked, according to Ula, so instead of doing it this way, if you want to do this as compactly and as concisely as possible, I have a different answer for you. what should you do? I'll tell you what you should do. You should take 2 tainim, those 2 figs, v'yaso some sheni, and make them meiser sheni, v'yifta, and then redeem them, v'yachzer v'yasim trumas meiser l'mokamacher. In other words, I'm sorry, I mispunctuated. V'yito shtei tainim, take the 2 figs as truma. And then Yaso some sheni, let them take meiser sheni, v'yifta and redeem it, v'yachzer v'yasim trumas meiser l'mokamacher, and then take the self same grain and make it meiser sheni afterwards, meiser rishon. In other words, if this is true, that which we said on the previously, that you can take meiser sheni and make a meiser rishon, and now in these 2 buckets of tevel, you're trying to tell us the most concise and compact way to take of trumas and meisers, so tell it to me in the most compact way, which is 2 figs and 1/10. Not 2 figs and 2/10, but 2 figs and 1/10. 2 figs for the truma, 1/10 which you first make meiser sheni, then redeem it, and then make meiser rishon. That's the most compact way to take of trumas and meisers, not the way you described it.
Where does meiser sheni come from? You don't have the meiser sheni. You redeemed it.
Take meiser sheni first, and then redeem it. We're assuming here, this according to the opinion, you can do l'chatchila. According to the opinion, you can do by Demai, at least you can do l'chatchila, right? According to that opinion. So instead, again, if you want to tell me the most compact way to do it, this is the most compact way to do it, right? Take 2 figs and 1/10, not 2 figs and 2/10, right? That's the kasha, right? So it must be, since the Brisa doesn't say to do that you can't take meiser sheni, redeem it, and make meiser rishon. It's attacking Ula. Since the Brisa didn't give us such a possibility, it must be you can't do this. That's his kasha. Rabbi Mona said, Rabbi Mona made the question even more, the question against Ula even stronger. He says, "V'ein shenish b'rishoina tovel l'rishon sheb'shniyah." Isn't the sheni in the rishoina? Now I'm sure I'm going to get this wrong. Let me see if I can get this right. This is complicated. This is very tricky. He says, maybe you'll say like this. Push an answer. Maybe you Ula will answer. This price is talking about where it's vada. Because where do we say you can take off sheni before rishon? Only by Demai. You can't do by vada. So maybe this price is talking by vada, and by vada we don't allow you to take off sheni before rishon. Maybe it's a simple answer, right? And it says here, in fact, right, vada, right? So how do we know it's vada? It says here take off truma gedola. So it says here take off if you're taking off 2 tainim as truma, so it sounds like it's vada for sure, because otherwise you wouldn't be taking off truma. So it says the Gemara, no. No, I better look at this first before I say it over. Just a second. Yeah. Okay. I really need to draw here. I don't want to be faithful. Look what he's doing. Here's a bucket and here's a bucket. This is tevel and this is tevel, right? So how's he doing it? What he's doing is, the Gemara is assuming he's taking 2/10. Imagine that's tenths, not drawn to scale. And 2/10. He's saying meiser of this and this, and meiser of this and this. What's happening here?
What's that accomplishing?
What?
What's it accomplishing?
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. You say meiser of this in here, right? Okay, in other words, this should be, let me draw it again. saying here the meiser in one bucket should be for the other bucket as well, right? Right? So in this case, he's taking meiser sheni on this bucket before he's taking meiser rishon on it itself. In other words, what he's saying, first I took off, this is number one, this is meiser rishon, right? I took off meiser rishon from here on here. Before I take off meiser rishon on it itself, I take off meiser sheni from here on here. So what am I doing? This must be talking about Demai. Because it was talking about Vadai. Before I went to number 2, I would have to take off another time number 1 on this itself. Right? So if I could take off 2 on the other bucket before I take off 1 on itself, it must be that I'm talking about a case where it's Demai. And that's why I can go to 2 on here before having done 1 on it itself. And if that's the case, we see that even by Demai, we're allowed to take off 2 before 1. You're not allowed to take the same measure for both 2 and then 1, for both, first for 2 and then for 1. Again, the assumption is since I take from one bucket on the other, before proceeding to Meiser Sheni on the other bucket, I should have to take off Meiser Rishon on the bucket I'm dealing with. If I don't have to take off Meiser Rishon on the bucket I'm dealing with before proceeding to Meiser Sheni on the other bucket, it must be by definition that I'm talking about Meiser Sheni of Meiser of Demai. And nonetheless, the Brisa doesn't give me the eitzah of taking Meiser Sheni, redeeming it, and then taking Meiser Rishon. So it must be that Ula's wrong. Okay? The Omer Abimana, let's see if we can see to make that fit inside. Armana, the Ein V'Sheni, Vein Sheni Shabarishoina, isn't the Sheni Shabarishoina, no, don't take it back in. Isn't the Sheni Shabarishoina, no, it's good, but I want to show it. This is the Sheni for the Rishona, Tavul, still Tevel, vis-a-vis the Rishon, Shebeshnia. In other words, before I can take off the Sheni Sheberishon, I have to take off the Rishon Shebeshnia. So if I don't have to, it must be talking about the Mai. If it's talking about the Mai, and nonetheless Ula's eitzah is not given, so I can't take Sheni and then do Rishon afterwards. It must be Ula's wrong. Rabbi Chanina said, Tamon Kri Shutevel Rishon Sheni. Now, Ula says it's different. Over there, it's a Kri. I'm not sure exactly how to read this, to be honest with you, but I'm going to try anyway. Of course, I don't have a choice. Here, where the let me just make sure I'm going to say it right. Yeah. Tamon Krishu Tevel Rishon Sheni. In the case of Tamon, it means there, but we're really talking about here, the case of Ula. The case of Ula, where you have the grain of the Mai, you want to make it Rishon and Sheni, so you want to you want to make it. You make it sequentially. First, it's Tavel for Rishon for Sheni. You make first Sheni, and then you go back and make it Rishon. Okay? You can make the same grain for Sheni and then Rishon. But here in the case of the two buckets, Sheni sheniskan machmas Rishon at choizev osas Rishon. You want to say the same thing. They want to make it simultaneous, and it means the Sheni, which is going to, this Meiser Sheni is going to be you're going to make it simultaneous in the same statement. How are you going to make it sequential in that case? In other words, the statement which he makes in that case, in that brisa is, my brisa says, meaning that he's doing everything simultaneously. He's expressing it simultaneously. He's doing it simultaneously. It's not consecutive. So what I guess what it boils down to is that it depends. In the case of wool, you're doing sequentially. First, you're taking off the Meiser Rishon, then you're taking off the Meiser Sheni, redeeming, then you're taking the Meiser Rishon. That's why that works. Here in the Brisa, we weren't entertaining the thought of doing things in sequence. We rather were dealing with how to do it in a concise fashion simultaneously. Simultaneous, then you have to take off Rishon and Sheni separately, because there's no time to take off the Sheni, redeem it, and then go back to the Rishon. So that's what I think the pshat is. Again, I'm not 100% clear. I don't know if that's exactly the pshat, but I think that's what we're trying to say. There's between simultaneous and consecutive. In any event, be that as it may, that's the end of that sugya. Let's go on to the next sugya. Shemen shagardi tzach betzbo. So we said oil which a gardi, an oil which a gardi puts on the guy who combs combs the wool. So he puts on his fingers chayv demai. Masher sorek, that which the weaver, those in B'tzemer, puts on the wool itself. Potter no is exempt from demai. Ma bin what's the truth in that? Ze al gav gufa botel. Here, by the case of the gardi, he puts it on his fingers. So it puts on his fingers, it's sicha. The other case, al gav tzemeru botel, he puts it not on his fingers. The weaver rather puts it on the wool, and therefore it's not. Therefore in that case he has to take myself separately. You know what? Let's just go another 5 minutes, because we can do normal in another 5 minutes. Okay? Let's just start the second parak. We're so far behind. We're a week behind because we missed 3 days last week. Read next parak. We just gained an omid, if you know, because the whole omid base is all ridbaz, right? These things you have to take off Demai everywhere. Now, everywhere, the Gemara assumes means even the assumption is even the Chutz La'aretz, right? That's the Pashup Pshat, okay? Why? Because it's too similar to food in Eretz Yisrael. Hatvela press states, Fatmorim loose states, V'charuvim carib, V'orez rice, V'kamon kimmel, it's rye seeds, V'orez sheb'chutz la'aretz. However, the rice in chutz la'aretz, which is, it's like, it looks different. So, you don't have to take out the mai from it, because everybody knows that's chutz la'aretz type rice. It's like browner rice or different type of rice, so that's exactly. Tamatin, we learned over there. Shum bal bechi. The garlic of bal bechi. It's a garlic from a certain place. Ubatzo sharichba, onion from richba. Ugrisin al kilkilin, a certain type of legume from kilkilin. Fadoshim mitios and Egyptian lentils. Haminim alolu, these types. Since there are similar but not the same in Eretz Yisrael, Chachamim had to tell you there are two types of onions. There are two types of garlic. They have to tell you there's shum and there's shum shel bal bechi. There's botzel and there's botzel sherichba. They have to give you a siman. So no, the shum in Eretz Yisrael is chayev and demai. Shum and bal bechi is not, and so on and so forth. Avol ha'altzirin v'pastikin, pastikin I think of pistachio nuts. V'alei strubelin aydei she'en k'etz ben beretz Yisrael lo tzorch l'etzem lem siman. When they could exempt them from demai, they just exempt them without giving any additional sign, because everybody knows these things only grow in Chutz La'aretz. They don't grow in Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Avin said, Hoda masnisa chilufa.
Our Mishnah is the exact opposite. Chiyuv aminim ha'elu. When it says here that these types are chayiv in Eretz Yisrael, don't think it's like we learned when we learned the Mishnah. When we learned the Mishnah, we thought because you have to do them in Chutz La'aretz also because they're so similar to the types you have in Eretz Yisrael. Says well, no, that's not the pshat, or at least says Rabbi Yovan, it's not the pshat. Rabbi Yovan says Hadam Asnis Chuv, it's the exact opposite. Chiyuv aminim ha'elu. Why is there no siman mentioned by these cases in our Mishnah? Tvela, Tmarim, Charuvin, they're just generic. You know why? They don't grow in Chutz La'aretz. It's not B'chol Makom means even in Chutz La'aretz, because they're similar to Eretz Yisrael. No, they don't grow B'chol Makom. If you find them, they're from Eretz Yisrael. You understand? It's not that we made Gzeir in Chutz La'aretz. The carobs which grow in Chutz La'aretz, you have to meiser because of carobs in Eretz Yisrael. Carobs don't grow in Chutz La'aretz. If you find a carob, it's Eretz Yisrael. I don't know if it's true altogether, but if you find dates in California, but if you're in the area around Eretz Yisrael, so they were muchzak from Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, there are three categories of fruit. There's fruit which only grows in Chutz La'aretz, you don't need a siman. Fruit in Eretz Yisrael, you don't need a siman. Fruit which has some types which grow in Eretz Yisrael, and some types which grows in Chutz La'aretz, there they had to give a siman. Which ones grow in Chutz La'aretz, Shub Shal Baal Bechi, and so on and so forth. Okay? So says the Gemara, is that true? Vod Veil Beboitzra, their prestates in Botzra, Shchikoi. They're worn down, they're not as nice. Vod Tmoim Alexandria, the dates in Alexandria, the Kikuninin, they're thin ones. Vod Choru Bebotzra, their carobs in Botzra, also Shchikoi, they're worn down ones. I went back, sorry. For Charv Biari. There's Charv and Biari, Gidur Hava. They're stunted. Vares Bechuta, there's rice Bechuta. It should be Achsaru Sumaku. It's either red or it's lousy, whatever. For common Bekifrus, hi, there's Kimmel in Cyprus. Akumu, it's twisted. So Zionist Gemara, right? All right, Rabbi Lezer said, Lo Shana Elokeh. It says better fruits grows in Israel. Amar Rabbi Lezer, Lo Shana Elokech Mina. Now here it's a very important aside here. Amar Rabbi Lezer, Lo Shana, and here the Gersa is wrong in your Gemaras. Lo Shana Elokech Mina Yisrael. If you buy Demai in Eretz Yisrael from a Jew, you're chayiv in Demai. Avol Lokech Mina Goy Demai. If you buy Mina a Goy, I'm sorry. Lokech Mina Goy Vadai. Lokech Mina Goy Vadai. You change the gears all together. Let me go back and read it again. Lokech Mina Yisrael Demai. Avol Lokech Mina Goy Vadai. If you buy grain in Eretz Yisrael from a Jew, then it's mine. If you buy it from a goy, it's vatai. Now it's going to opinion that produce of goyim grown in Eretz Yisrael is not exempt from Trumas and Maasros. So going to that opinion, if you buy it from a Jew, so it's mine, maybe you Maaser it. If you buy it from a goy, obviously it's vadai. He definitely didn't Maaser it, right? Rabbi Yochanan lo shani elokech mi Yisrael. Lo shani. It makes Rabbi Yochanan says it doesn't make a difference. Lo shani lokech misroli lokech min hakum, where they buy from a Jew, from a guy, Demai. In both cases, Demai, it's not vadai. Why? Because maybe the guy bought it. The guy is a retailer. He bought it from the wholesaler. Who's the wholesaler? Ayid, and he maybe he took off Trumas Samaitis, right? Rabbi Lezer Savar Meima Rover. What's the machlokas? Rabbi Lezer Savar Meima Rover Eretz Yisrael Nesuna Biyad Akum. Rabbi Lezer holds most of Eretz Yisrael is by goyim. So therefore, if the goy has it, he certainly got it from other goyim, and therefore it's vadai. Rabbi Lezer Savar Meima Rover Eretz Yisrael Nesuna Biyad Yisrael. It's mostly Jewish, and therefore, even if you get for goy, maybe it came from a Jew. Fa'afil Yisbar Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yochanan Rover Eretz Yisrael Nesuna Biyad Yisrael. And the truth is, maybe even Rabbi Lezer agrees with Rabbi Yochanan that Rover Eretz Yisrael is given over to Jews, and the Jews do take off Trumus Umaisrus. Nonetheless, Rabbi Lezer so chash l'miut, I was afraid that maybe this came, Rabbi Lezer's machmir, that maybe that which the goy is selling came from a goyish source, and therefore if a goy is selling it, he regards it as vadai. All right, we'll stop here for today. Tomorrow we'll go on with this machlokas tomorrow. Because what they sent to Chutzlaretz is vadai. It's vadai. In Eretz Yisrael, though, all stuff which goes to Tznuva has the din of Demai. Because they try and take off as much Trumas Demais as they can. The question is whether the Hashgacha is sufficient to rely on. So it's certainly no less. What, the Trumas Demais? They don't give it to anybody. They just take it off. But they don't, it's considered to be rectified even if it's just taken off, even if it's not given to the recipient. They only have to take off a very small amount. 2% for truma, a mashu for truma, and 1/100th for trumas meiser. The rest of the meiser you have to designate, but you don't have to take off. And meiser sheni redeem, you throw it out. Throw it out.
My daughter says not to buy tznuva because they built the cows on the
No, you're not supposed to use the milk. Not supposed to use the milk. Could be because of Orlo also. In Eretz Yisrael, there are all sorts of problems. Don't eat fruit if you live in Israel.
No, but tznuva.
Only bread.
Dairy products.
Yeah. No, to the dairy products. That's right.